Poker2Nite presents Poker2Nite. Coming up, our own Joe Sebok recaps his trip to the Bahamas and the Caribbean adventure. World Series of Poker main event runner-up Darvin Moon takes us in the tank, heads up for the bracelet. You'll meet some of the game's best players you may have never heard of in high-stakes, low-profile. Just because you don't recognize the fins doesn't mean they're not sharks. We'll be joined in studio by six-time World Series of Poker bracelet winner and two-time arm wrestling champion Lane Flack. And speaking of Flack, don't forget Dana Workman and the Weekly Misdeal. All that and more on Poker2Nite. Welcome to Poker2Nite. I'm Scott Huff, and alongside me is Joe Sebok, fresh from the Bahamas in Paradise Island. How was Paradise, Joe?
Well, I don't know how fresh I am. I've only been in the States for about 12 hours, so a little bit of jet lag still. But it's still the Bahamas, absolutely gorgeous, so I can't complain.
Although I heard a little rumor.
I thought I told them to keep that down.
That you were traveling more than you were actually playing in the poker tournament, more hours logged overall.
Well, I can't confirm or deny that. I think it would make me look bad, but if you blinked while I was down there, you may have missed me.
Well, of course, we're talking about the PokerStars.net Caribbean adventure, and you are going to have to confirm or deny because that's what we do here. So where did you finish overall?
Well, unfortunately for me, they don't really keep finishes in those first 3 hours. So I don't know if I was, 1,200 or 1,300. I took a bit of a gross hand early, a bit of a beat, but I'm happy to walk you through that and let you know how it went.
Oh, let's do it.
All right. So with blinds at 150 and 300, I had about 33,000 from my starting stack of 30K, and an early position raiser brought it in for 900. There were two callers in the middle, and I elected to call on the button with 7-8 of hearts. We then went to a flop of 7-7-5 with two diamonds. I flopped trips, so I'm obviously in a good spot. The early position raiser ends up betting 1,200. The other two guys get out of the way, and I decide to make it 4K right there, so I just raise him. He ends up calling, so I'm immediately trying to figure out what he could have. He could have a diamond draw, an overpair, who knows at this point. We go to the turn, which is the 4 of spades. It doesn't change too much, or so I think. He checks to me, and I make it 8,000. He calls pretty quickly, so now at this point, I'm really thinking that he has an overpair, because somebody on a draw is typically going to fold there. Then we go to the river, which is the 6 of clubs. He starts fumbling with his chips, which I definitely don't like all of a sudden, and he bets out 11,000. So it's a pretty gross situation. I'm thinking he could have a diamond draw. He could have gone crazy with an overpair for some strange reason, but I don't think I can fold because I've improved from trips to a straight now. So I end up calling him, no raise of course, and he shows me 2 6s. So he rivers a full house. It's a little bit disgusting, and I've lost about 2/3 of my chip stack.
I mean, that's pretty tough to fade. I mean, they start you with 30,000 in chips, but I figure you had to be pretty crippled there or you were out?
I wasn't out. I was definitely crippled, though. But takes us to the next hand, so I can walk you through my death hand. So the blinds were actually the same level, 150, 300. I was down at this point to about 8,500 chips, so it's a pretty big difference all of a sudden. I had 2 limpers. I was actually in the big blind, and there were 2 limpers in late position who both came in for 300. The small blind ends up making, a pretty big raise. He makes it 1,900, and I look down. I've got 2 10s. I don't have a lot of chips. It's certainly a spot where he could be stealing. He could really have anything, maybe even just a lone ace. So I decided to move in for my 8,500. The other 2 gentlemen fold, the early limpers. He calls pretty quickly. He does have an ace with another ace. So it's a pretty bad situation for me. The flop comes down pretty innocuously, 5, 6, 7. Jack on the turn, and the river was a 9, and my Bahamas trip was over pretty quickly.
Well, I'm sorry to say we've seen this before. It's Joe Sebok busting from a tournament, and always the gracious loser, doesn't even shake the guy's hand.
He didn't get up. He didn't want to shake my hand. He was happy to just have the chips.
Oh, come on. He wanted to meet one of his poker heroes. He meets Joe Sebok. The least you could do is shake the guy's hand before you leave.
I don't think he was interested in that. I think I was just the guy who was busted out of the tournament at that point.
All right, I'll give you a free pass this time. 1,300th place, not exactly a final table.
You're right about that. I didn't get anywhere near the final table. But, of course, there were a number of players who did make it to that final table. And after 2 day ones of over 700 players each, this year's Caribbean Adventure set a new record with over 1,500 players. After 5 days of play, those 1,500 were whittled down to the final 8, which included several young players who learned to play online, and one not-so-young player, owner of Card Player Magazine, Barry Schulman. Schulman, who has been on a sick, unbelievable heater lately, finished 3rd in the event, taking home $1.3 million, and it's actually his second $1.3 million cash in the last 6 months. When tournament play reached heads up, it was 21-year-old Ty Riemann from Morden, Illinois, who faced off against the youngest player at the table, 19-year-old Harrison Gimbel. In the final hand, Gimbel's 2 10s defeated Riemann's 2 8s, and Gimbel walked away with the title and $2.2 million.
Rounding out the top 8, in 4th place, taking home $1 million, Benjamin Zamani, and the first man to leave the final table, ending up in 8th place, taking home $201,300, was Tom Corral. And Siebes, I know, sometime very soon, I will be reading your name among those standings. It's got to happen. Something has got to give.
I've got the fingers crossed. It's going to happen soon. But, I mean, it was still the Bahamas, right? I got to swim with the dolphins, lay on the beach. It was gorgeous out.
You swam with the dolphins in 50-degree weather?
Oh, I didn't realize you checked the weather. I guess I'm not going to get away with that lie.
Yeah, not this time. Well, it is fun and games in poker most of the time, but we do have to report the news, whether good or bad. And this week, poker lost one of its truly kindest souls when Amir Vahidi passed away as a result of complications from diabetes. Amir was one of poker's biggest personalities and absolutely had the heart to match. His poker accomplishments included a final table at the 2003 World Series of Poker main event and over $3.3 million in lifetime tournament winnings.
Amir Vahidi was one of the sweetest men in poker. Always there with a laugh, always there with a word of encouragement. And in my poker infancy, he was always there, just to smile and sort of urge you on and give you a kind word.
I think a lot of poker players and just people in general would do well to take a page out of Amir's book. Always a class act, whether winning or losing. And for anyone who might be looking for a way to honor Amir's name, last week's guest and tournament director Matt Savage is already working on a charity tournament to benefit diabetes research right here in Los Angeles. So we'll be sure to bring you more information on that as soon as it becomes available. For now, let's try to brighten things up a bit with that girl over there and see what's going on with Dana Workman and the Weekly Misdeal.
Hey guys, coming up tonight, the Los Angeles Kings hold a poker tournament, and it's charity and celebrities galore down in the Bahamas.
All right, Dana, thank you. Also, don't forget to check out UB.net and the Poker2Nite Pro Challenge. They're giving away 2 main event prize packages every week. More info on that later in the show.
Up next on Poker Tonight, we'll be joined in studio by 6-time World Series of Poker bracelet winner Lane Flack. Back to back after this.